Hi, everybody. Um, so sorry, this is not the beautiful, well polished video that I had intended to make, in which I was going to, screen share um, my presentation and everything. But you would not believe the amount of technical difficulties I have had today. Uh, Two laptops, multiple microphones later, and just I couldn't get anything to work. So I apologize about that. Maybe one day down the road once things get figured out, or maybe when I actually learn how to do proper YouTube videos, I'll revisit this and actually make this even better. But I just wanted to get back to all of you who have expressed so much interest in the project. So this way I can at least go ahead and talk you through how I accomplish this in my classroom. Um, so I will be reading off of my notes a little bit, just so I can make sure that I can keep everything going, the order in which I usually do it. So let me just pull that up real fast. So while I'm getting that going, just to let you know, teaching is like a second career for me. And I actually only started teaching about 5 years ago now. And um, I just really love pulling in what I learned from being a small business owner for over 10 years and just working in different industries, from everything from, low level positions to management positions. And like I said, being a business owner for over 10 years. So there's a lot that I like to show my students, like how it actually transitions into the real world, what we're talking about in class. And this is one of those really great projects that really shows them how this can really turn into a real world thing. Okay, so without further ado, um, the way I like to preface this project is to think of it as any other sales pitch that you might have, being in any sort of business where sales are involved, right? Like my previous background, I was a professional photographer for over 10 years. Like I said, my biggest area was in wedding photography. And gosh, when you're talking about photography, especially these days after the invention of the digital camera, the market got kind of saturated. So you had to like really be on your A game to have people trust you enough to invest in you, because there's 20 other photographers who'd be more than happy to take your spot right now. And with wedding photography, one of the big things in the trade business is to go to those big, wedding extravaganzas, like where all of the vendors are there and you can shop and kind of get a feel for 10 different cake decorators, 20 different photographers. It's always kind of difficult when you look and see, like, oh, I'm just one of like 25 other wedding photographers. How do I stand out? Okay, so this is kind of how this project translates into that. Um, Disney actually has like a whole cultural staff now. And what's really fabulous is I actually just read an interview a couple days ago after my daughter and I went to go see Raya and the Last Dragon. And when I was reading that interview with the creators of the movie, I loved that within the actual interview, they said um, that they had focused on Southeast Asia, which of course encompasses many different countries, because Disney had never done that before. But they also had a team specifically for 5 years to be researching the heck out of that culture. And if you haven't seen that movie yet, this might be a little bit of a spoiler, but within the movie, you see all of the different cultures, and then they are put together into kind of like one made up realm, but at the same time, they each have their own specific culture. And you can definitely see that reflecting all the different ones. So, this is kind of what we're asking them to do in this project. So, I'm gonna put actually a copy of that or a link to that article in the notes down below so that you can also find it. Because it's really great, I think, to share with the students how this is actually a real world job that we're kind of training them for. So they can actually look at the way that storytelling and cultural studies and things like that, how they can translate into real jobs that are exciting and different and, aren't like a waste of their time. Because so often, how do we hear that? How am I going to use this in the real world? Here's how, you know? So here you go. Um, you We're going to preface the idea of that they're going to work in groups because this is a group project, and like I said with Disney, it's all very much group everything. Nobody is just sitting around working by themselves, and only that one person is totally responsible for this thing. It's a whole group effort. Okay, so as a team, they have to identify a culture that they feel has either not been represented by Disney in one of their movies or has not been represented well. And sometimes they kind of think about like, well, I can't think of any. And and they try to say they always go to Africa first. Every year I've done this. That's like their first thing. And they say, but we can't do Africa because of Lion King. And then I tell them, well, yeah, technically, Lion King is set in the Sahara of Africa. I said, but do you really see any African culture being represented in that movie? And then they think about it and they're like, oh, no, not really. So again, yeah, in theory, Disney has this movie that represents Africa in some way. And they did a beautiful job of representing the Sahara and how beautiful it can be. But at the same time, not much of the culture is there in general. So then it kind of starts blossoming out of that. So I kind of let them know at first they have six. Is it six? Yes. I'm trying to remember. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Five different roles because I try to keep it to groups of five. Um, you can kind of move this around a little bit if you think, and maybe that's too big for you, too little. I deal with 10th graders, so what works well in my 10th grade class you might have to adjust for your needs. But here's how I break down the roles. One, you need the storyteller. This is that person who shines best at actually writing out stories, maybe even like telling them, just like really creative in that storytelling aspect. Then the second one is the researcher. This is that person who is for lack of a better word, is super nerdy about all history stuff, like really good at the history, the culture, researching. Probably also going to be looking into some of the marketing needs that are going to need to be addressed, like project marketing and your target market, because you have two different markets when you're thinking about these movies. And I'll get to that in just a minute. You have your artist, and this is for those beautifully gifted kids who can just do magic with anything artistic. And they love this because it's really a time for them to shine. So they get to come up with a lot of the concept art for the movie. Posters, maybe helping create the characters or the setting. Um, you kind of like let them loose on that. And they always end up really rocking it and just coming up with some beautiful work. Then you have your film production. This person is really good at coming up with teaser trailers. I have some kids and they love doing stuff like this. If I had like a couple of my students here, they probably could have helped me make the most amazing video on the fly for you today. So I'll probably have to check with them when I get back into my classroom next week. Um, but so they are going to be working on creating that amazing teaser trailer that's going to wow the audience and be like, yes, I gotta go see this. Okay, so and then they also might also be involved with recording some of the behind the scenes stuff that's going on. Some of my students really like to incorporate more of a live action film rather than an animated film, and that's really cool too. Then you have your fifth role, which is your project manager. I explain this like any other real world job. You got your manager, the one who's kind of herding all the cats, making sure everybody's staying on task, doing a lot of the work that you would be doing. So it takes a little bit of the pressure off of you as the teacher, and it helps them to kind of come into their own. This is really good for those kids who are interested in like leadership skills, really good talkers, because they're also going to be the one that's going to be doing most of the talking when it comes to the actual sales pitch. So those kids really love it. They love to get to step into a role where they have more responsibility, and they're kind of making sure everybody's staying on track, problem solving with the rest of the team, whatever it takes. And then they do report back to you because you're kind of like the CEO, person behind the scenes. You're letting them run it, but they got to report to you and keep informing you of how are things going. Do I need to step in if something's not going quite well? That type of thing. And I think it's really nice for the kids because it gives them a chance to kind of have that like professional feel. Um, then I just let them kind of like so I explain the roles first, and then I let them kind of like start the gears turning of, oh yeah, I'd be really great for that, blah blah blah. So then they get into their groups. However you want to do that. If you want to make the groups and then have them choose the roles within your group making, that's one way of doing it. It's letting, or you could let them just choose on their own entirely. So it's really up to you. But after that, that's when the magic really begins. Then they start brainstorming, like, well, what cultures haven't been done well or haven't been done at all, and so I have them start making lists. And then after they start making the lists, then they start doing just kind of like that light research. Okay. Because, Disney's been making movies for a few decades now. So they kind of got to go through and double check, like, oh, well, yeah, this one wasn't done, like I was thinking Chinese, but then, like Mulan now that we've seen 2 versions of Mulan, especially, Chinese culture has been done fairly well, that type of thing. So, like, they have to really think about it. Um, but then I always have them kinda, like, finalize their whole thing in a project, like a project form, right? Like, so the project manager is gonna meet with me after everything's said and done, and then in the form, they're kind of informing me who's doing what role, and like, are we, like, and then, we have a conversation like I would if, like, with an employee that was underneath me, like a manager that would be underneath me. Like, okay, so you think Sandy's going to be competent at that research aspect? Do you see any potential problems there? What should we look out for? That type of thing. And then they also kind of fill me in on the culture that they have identified that they really want to go with. Why do they think it's a good idea? So it's kind of like this, proposal in a way. Once we have signed off on everything, the project manager and myself, then they're good to go and they really just kind of start diving in. Um, at some point, I do also kind of re-emphasize to them about target marketing. Okay, so when we're talking about Disney movies or any kind of movie, really, um, this is something to think about. You ideally have two different markets that you're kind of looking at. You have the CEOs who are going to say yes or no. Okay, nothing is ever really done in stone until you have the check in your hand, right? So you got to appeal to them. You got to make them believe that it's going to be a solid investment. But at the same time, you also have kids and parents who you have to keep in mind. The good thing about using Disney is that they've really broadened, especially taking in like Marvel and Star Wars. So they've reached out into that, or branched out into that larger market now of older kids, especially, and teenagers and adults. So there's so much that you can do there. It doesn't have to be just animated movies anymore. But either way, you're gonna want to make sure that it's a film that the kids are going to be interested in seeing, and B, that the parents are also going to want their kids to see. Being a mom of a 7-year-old, Um, Not that I don't let her watch anything, but I'm very critical of what she does watch. I know what's appropriate for her age. I know what's appropriate for her personality, those types of things. So, those are some really good things for the kids to also keep in mind. So, anytime um, we start thinking about it, and of course, you can't have Disney without death. Um, so we talk about how to make those things child appropriate. Yes, death is a natural part of life. Death is very prominent in all of the Disney movies, um, but it's done in a way in which it's not going to usually freak out the kid and not make the parents outraged or anything like that. So there's so much to keep in mind with target marketing, and the audience and the purpose behind the sales pitch. Um, then the last kind of tidbit I will share with you is that I really love to take it up a notch, and I usually have professionals within the community actually come in and hear these sales pitches. That always elevates my students' work level to a whole other thing. They take it way more seriously when they know a whole bunch of um, like last year, I had like business people, I had marketers, I had some marketers who had actually had Disney as clients. So they actually knew for sure what Disney would be looking for and what they wouldn't be. So that was a really fantastic way for these kids to get feedback on did they actually achieve their purpose? Um, because so often they're just making things for the teacher to get a grade, right? They never really know if it's actually achieved some greater purpose of, whatever. So this way, they're actually hearing from people in the profession of you did a really great job and here is why. Or here are some things that really could have been improved on. So that way when they're getting the feedback from somebody else that's actually in that profession, it just makes a huge difference to the kids. So that would be something that I would really suggest doing in some way if you can. You may not be able to bring people into the building right now, which totally understandable. I can't right now either, with COVID and everything. But is there a way in which they could maybe make a recording and you put it into the hands of some of the sponsors of the school or something like that? Which, FYI, if you are trying to struggling to figure out how to get the word out that you actually would like professionals to help judge, that is actually where I started. I started with the different sponsors of our school, different businesses and things like that. I also reached out to parents after that when I still had some areas to fill. And lots of parents were very excited. I just don't let parents judge the class period in which their child is in, just for the sake of keeping things neutral and making sure that, there's no favoritism one way or another, because that would just create a whole other thing. So those are some great ideas to add as well too. So anyway, I hope I didn't take too long. Um, Gosh, this is actually a lot longer than I had wanted to make it. But hopefully you've gotten some good things out of it and you can use some of these strategies in your classroom soon. Um, Down below, I will actually put um, a link if you want to sign up for a monthly newsletter in which I discuss other real world project based learning activities, and also my love of all things cultural studies and world literature. I'm also going to put that the article about uh, the interview from the Raya and the Last Dragon creators. Um, what else? I think that's everything else. I'll put all that in the comments down below or in the description. Please, 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 please. I would love it if you shared how this goes in your classrooms if you choose to do it. It would just be so exciting to see how other students are responding to it, how other teachers are kind of making it their own. It would be awesome. So definitely share some of that if you want to connect with me on Instagram and share pictures. I'll link that in the description as well. Or feel free to come back here and throw it in the chats. So anyway, Sorry this took a little bit longer than I expected, and it isn't as beautiful as I wanted it, but I hope it's helpful, and I will talk to you all soon, hopefully. Good luck.